Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're tackling something absolutely crucial: how to stop sounding like a robot and finally uncover the IELTS Band 7 speaking blueprint. Look, if you've been stuck at a speaking score of 5.5 or maybe 6, and you feel like you've been studying for months with no progress, you are in the right place. The source material we're exploring today completely tears down some major misconceptions about the test. It actually reveals a hidden architectural blueprint that can take a struggling, hesitant answer and transform it into a highly natural, confident Band 7+ response. We're going to dive right into exactly how you can ditch those memorized robotic phrases, swap them out for natural, flexible discourse markers, and use specific reasoning patterns to structure really impressive long-form answers. Honestly, this approach changes the whole game. So there's this brilliant concept in the research that describes exactly what goes wrong for heavily rehearsed students. The sources call it the Cologne Problem. Just think about the examiner sitting across from you for a second. This is an expert who has probably sat through, 11,000 speaking tests? If a candidate walks in relying on those heavily rehearsed cookie-cutter templates, the examiner identifies that brand of memorization the very second they open their mouth. It's literally like wearing an entire bottle of cheap cologne. Sure, it might make you feel confident, but to the expert in the room, it's overwhelming and it's totally unnatural. The moment you chain together 3 memorized transition phrases, the examiner's pen moves. Your fluency and coherence score gets capped at a 6.0, and the robot-detected alarm just goes off in their head.
It is fascinating to see the difference between a robotic test taker and a natural speaker in practice. Take a classic, memorized opener like, "In today's fast-paced modern society." We've all heard it, right? Many candidates rehearse something exactly like that. But contrast that with simply saying, "In general, I think." Just making that one swap, trading a stiff, heavily memorized opening for a natural, flexible marker, immediately shifts the examiner's perception from robot to human. The key insight here is that it's not the act of memorizing that ruins your score. It's that candidates don't know what to replace those stiff phrases with. The whole goal is to use language that makes you sound like an active, spontaneous thinker, not a pre-recorded transcript.
Now, to really pull this off, you need a major mindset shift. Part 3 of the IELTS speaking test is emphatically not a quiz show. The examiner isn't just conducting a survey of your likes and dislikes, waiting for a factual yes or no. Instead, the sources suggest treating it like you're explaining a PhD thesis to your grandmother while she makes tea. I love that analogy. It means your answer needs structure. It needs clear examples, but most importantly, it has to sound conversational and approachable. It's about developing a mini essay out loud in real time, but with a human face. They're really just checking if you can follow a thought to its logical conclusion. So you're probably wondering, how do we actually build that conversational structure on the fly without panicking? Well, it comes down to a framework called REC+. This is basically your default architectural blueprint for answering complex questions. REC+ stands for reason, example, consequence, plus a natural counterpoint at the very end. So when an examiner hits you with a tough question, there's no need to freeze up. The pattern is super simple. Give them a reason, ground it in a really specific example, state the consequence of that example, and then just add a phrase like, "that said," to show you understand the other side of the argument. It gives literally any answer immediate logical structure, and you won't sound like you're reading from a textbook. While Rec Plus is going to be your absolute best friend, the source material actually reveals an entire toolbox of these reasoning patterns. There are 4 more powerful ones depending on what kind of question you get. If they ask if something is good or bad, the both sides pattern works perfectly. If they ask why something happens, go with cause and effect. For questions about big social trends, the short-term versus long-term pattern is ideal. And if you get a question about technology or education, contrasting individual versus society is incredibly powerful. Now, the crucial takeaway here isn't to memorize every single one of these. Don't do that. The strategy is to pick Rec Plus and maybe 2 others, drill them until they're totally automatic, and then you'll have structural options ready to tackle absolutely any topic they throw at you. Okay, but there is a massive hurdle we need to talk about: the Band 6 expansion trap. A lot of test takers get a question like, "Do you think technology makes people less social?" And they answer something like, "Yes, I think so, because people use phones a lot. That's my opinion." Guys, that is a 20-second answer with 0 detail. Treating the exam like a basic Q&A where you just drop a 1-sentence opinion is a massive trap. You have to expand your answers to demonstrate your language range. But you have to do it without just mumbling or totally losing the plot and going off topic. So the obvious question is, how do you expand an answer without just padding it with useless fluff? The solution is this highly effective technique called the why ladder. After you make a claim, like people use phones a lot, you conceptually climb the ladder. Step 1. Ask yourself why.
Well, because smartphones provide constant stimulation. Step 2, ask, so what does that mean? It means quiet moments feel uncomfortable, so we fill them with screens. Step 3, ask, what happens next? Over time, being without a phone causes genuine anxiety. Boom. That simple process literally just doubled your answer's length with deep, coherent logic. And the best part, you didn't even need any new, complicated vocabulary to do it. You just needed to think a little deeper using the English you already know.
All right, now that we have our structure and our length, we need to fix the glue that holds the whole thing together. Relying on basic transitions like firstly and secondly gives your speech the predictable, boring rhythm of a photocopier. It practically screams memorized template to the examiner. Instead, you want to use flexible, natural discourse markers like in general and that said. They function entirely differently. Saying in general softens a claim. It makes you sound like you've carefully considered what you're saying. And using that said introduces a counterpoint in a really conversational way. These are the markers that actually make you sound like a real thinker engaging with a topic, rather than a robot reciting a list.
Here is another incredibly powerful swap, the word therefore. It's stiff, it's mechanical, and it is notoriously overused in spoken English exams. If you replace that rigid conclusion with a phrase like, on balance, it changes the dynamic completely. Saying on balance, I'd say, honestly does the heavy lifting of 10 therefores. It sends a super clear signal to the examiner, I have weighed both sides of this argument, and here is my final, mature conclusion. It instantly elevates the whole tone of your response. So, bringing that all together, here is your complete natural markers toolkit. Phrases like in general, on balance, that said, as a result, from my perspective and in my experience. These are your secret weapons. But hey, remember that Cologne analogy from earlier? The key takeaway from the experts is do not use the whole bottle at once. The absolute best approach is to start practicing just 2 of these at a time. Use them in your practice sessions until they feel like a totally natural part of your everyday vocabulary. Only then should you add 2 more. That is the proven way to build fluency naturally.
Okay, let's bring everything to a climax and see how this all comes together in the real world. Let's look at a simulated test prompt. Imagine the examiner asks you, do you think exams are the best way to test students? Let's see how a typical test taker handles this versus someone who is armed with this new blueprint.
First up, the typical response. It usually goes something like, I think exams are good because they test your knowledge, but some students are nervous, so it might not be fair. That's my opinion, right? This is a textbook band 5.5 response. It's only about 22 seconds long, there's no clear reasoning pattern, absolutely no natural markers, and it just relies heavily on short, underdeveloped ideas. Now, the ideas themselves aren't bad, but the complete lack of development and structure instantly caps the score. The examiner literally has no choice but to write down that you have a limited ability to develop responses.
Now let's completely reconstruct that exact same answer using our new framework. Let's look at the Band 7 transformation. We start with a natural marker. In general, I think exams serve a useful purpose. Great. Then the REC plus pattern kicks in. We give the reason. They give students a clear goal. Then we climb the Y ladder and provide a solid example. For instance, when I was preparing for my university entrance exams, I studied far more consistently. Then, boom, we hit them with the counterpoint using our natural marker. That said, exams aren't perfect. Students who perform poorly under stress can be disadvantaged. And finally, we wrap it up. On balance, I'd say exams are valuable when combined with other assessments. Just look at that. The difference is striking. It's a polished, 1-minute, Band 7 plus response. No robotic phrases anywhere, just clear, logical, human communication.
To wrap this explainer up, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. The very next time you sit down to practice an IELTS speaking question, I want you to record yourself, listen back, and ruthlessly self-assess. Ask yourself, did you follow a pattern or did you just list a bunch of short, disconnected ideas? Did you climb the Y ladder to expand your thoughts? Did you use a natural discourse marker or did you reach for that cheap cologne of memorized templates? Transforming your speaking score isn't about learning a handful of magic words. It's about building the architecture of a Band 7 thinker, one practice session at a time. I really hope this explainer has given you the exact tools you need to do just that. Thanks for joining us.